Welcome back to the Squared Circle, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Shawn Credle along with Mark Bray. And Mark, before we dive into our review of Monday Night Raw, just want to thank Jim Christian and everyone associated with EWA Wrestling. Of course, that's what you see behind us right now. If you want more information on the Eastern Wrestling Alliance, make sure you log on to their website at ewamaryland.com. That's ewamaryland.com. Now, Mark, let's dive right into it. Monday Night Raw, of course, first time in about a decade that they had direct competition. And really, in my opinion, they didn't go overboard with their show, but they had one major focus, and that was the return of a former WWE champion.
That's right, Shawn. Monday night marked the return of the excellence of execution, Bret the Hitman Hart. Now, for some of you younger fans, last time he was in that ring, things did not go so well in 1997, Shawn.
No, it did not. The infamous Montreal Screwjob, which, in my opinion, changed the course of wrestling forever. It led to the Attitude Era of WWE, and some will say led to the demise of WCW. And so for Bret Hart, who had many of ill feelings for, we're talking 12 years, for him to come back and for him to actually be standing in the middle of a WWE ring was surreal enough. Then add the fact that he actually stood in the ring with the two men responsible for the original Screwjob, one Shawn Michaels and one Vince McMahon.
Absolutely, and you know, right at the top of the show, Bret the Hitman Hart walks out to a newer version of his theme song, comes into the ring, and just as you said, calls out the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, has him come down to the ring and confronts him.
I'm gonna call back there and ask Shawn Michaels to come out here. Shawn Michaels, I'd like to take this opportunity right now to bury the hatchet with you.
Now, for those in our generation who grew up with the Hulkster and the natural transition was to become a Hitman fan.
Right.
And then once that happened, to see Bret Hart in 1997 in the Screwjob made a lot of fans in our generation upset.
Yeah.
And for him to come back was probably one of the most heartfelt moments to see him and Shawn make up in the ring that I've seen ever in the world of wrestling.
Oh, I agree. It was certainly watching that segment between Michaels and Hart. You know, we talk about having great matches on television and not having promos, but that was one time where I didn't care if there was a match that happened. You had to see that, you had to sit down, you had to watch what was going to happen between Hart and Michaels and whether or not, you know, would one hit the other. I mean, you know, a legitimate fight, more than one, broke out between those two back in 96 and 97. So there was no love lost there between that, and it's real. It's not something that was manufactured. These two men believed that they were the best in the business, and usually there's only room for one. So to watch them interact again and to put everything aside, and I think it has a lot to do with the new values that Shawn Michaels has and his new realization and him being out of the ring for those 5 years, you know, coming back in, and he's got a new appreciation for the business. And I think it took a little longer for Bret, in my opinion, to get over it. But once he got over it, now you're seeing everything start to come together, and it's best for business.
Well, there is no doubt that the two of them, at one time during the 1990s, were the best that the business had to offer.
Oh, yeah.
And frankly, you know, it continues to this day when they were in that ring. Now, the WWE says that they made no changes to their Monday Night Raw to go against TNA Impact. But at 8:57 on TNA, Hulk Hogan comes out.
Yes, he did.
Right at the top of the hour on Monday Night Raw, no intro, no nothing, boom. Bret's music hits, he comes down to the ring.
Yes.
Now, was that manufactured or was that on purpose?
Oh, that was definitely on purpose. I told, you know, when we were talking to people on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, I remember saying, now watch at 9 o'clock. They won't even have the Raw open. There will be no pyrotechnics, none of that. They're going to go straight to the ring, and Bret's going to be right there. And that's exactly what they did. At 9 o'clock, once they did the little WWE open, went right to the ring announcer, intro Bret Hart, and he was out there.
Right.
Because back in the wars, segments would change, you know, on a minute, on a second, based on what the other person was doing.
Based on what the competition was doing.
And if you know the way Eric Bischoff works, because he has that extra hour, He's going to start whatever at usually 3 minutes before the hour. That way, you don't. If you forget to change the channel, oh well, you're stuck on TNA, and that's exactly what they want. So Vince is very smart. He knows that. Threw Bret Hart out there, and then they stayed out there for a long, long time. So I wonder whether or not if that segment was supposed to go that long, or did they go back to the day when back before, if a segment was great, kind of like Mick Foley and The Rock at that one point,
yes,
you just let it go.
You just let it go.
And that's what happened with Michaels and Hart, watching those two men in the ring, and you can tell that there was no script writing necessary for that. You have two guys who know exactly what they need to say to get over with the crowd, whatever they want to get over at that point in time.
Right.
And it could not have come off any better, including what I felt was the tease of the super kick from Michaels, the Bret Hart, when he stopped, turned around, and looks like he was going to kick him, but it ended up that they were hugged and embraced and finally let bygones be bygones.
Now, Shawn, for those out there that aren't familiar with the guest host concept, Bret Hart was brought in to be a one-time guest host of Monday Night Raw. Now, at the end of the show, Vince McMahon and Bret Hart have their standoff in the ring, and Vince McMahon ultimately kicks Bret Hart.
Yes, he does.
Now, does this mean that Bret Hart is done with the WWE again, or is there something else on the horizon for the Hitman?
Well, there's something very big on the horizon for the Hitman, and it's the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania, something that Bret Hart has not been a part of since 1997. Long time for the Hitman not to be a part of WrestleMania. But what happened at the end of Raw was the beginning of the road to WrestleMania. And they usually say it starts at the Rumble. No, I think it started on January 4th.
Started a little early this year.
Yes, it did. So it wouldn't surprise me if you see a one-on-one street fight, Bret the Hitman Hart and Vince McMahon one-on-one, because they're going to give the people what they've been wanting to see for 12 years now.
Absolutely. Well, we all know that the Hitman's in the ring days as a everyday performer are long behind him,
yes,
due to a stroke in '04,
yes,
and a concussion suffered in the early part, the turn of the century. Now, if Bret Hart does get involved in a long term with the WWE, which sources say that he is, I can think of two reasons why he's there. Number one, closure. He never got closure from the company that he gave 20 years of his life to.
Right.
Okay. Number two, I think it's for his niece and his nephew. He's there to make sure that the Hart dynasty gets the push that they deserve.
Right.
And really, nothing bad can come. Only good can come from the new business arrangement between Bret the Hitman Hart and the WWE.
Yeah, and I think that there's more to that. You want to add, and Vince announced it on Monday night, that Stu Hart is going into the Hall of Fame, which is huge because a lot of people came from Stampede Wrestling. So for Stu Hart to go in, and I think if it doesn't happen this year, and the only reason why I think it may not happen this year is if WrestleMania goes to Toronto like they've been talking about, and that is Owen Hart getting into the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. Which has been yelled at and screamed for year after year after year, put Owen in there. So I think that this is the building block of steps of something going in there.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Bret Hart and WWE are synonymous with each other.
Yeah.
Anytime you get a Hart name with the WWE and put them together, only good things can come.
That certainly will. Folks, when we return, we'll be back with a special interview with some of the local superstars here in Maryland wrestling.
Don't go away.